Relative pronouns are going to tell us more about some noun in a sentence. We use who, which, that, when, where, or in which, whose or in whose, in these ways that I'll show you right now. That's the guy who gave the big speech. So that's the guy, we're talking about the guy, and we're going to explain more about him who gave the big speech. Right? So we're going to combine the two sentences. Basically, this comes from, that's the guy, and he gave the big speech. Right, so we're combining two ideas into one using relative pronouns. This is the product that or which I want to buy. And so that's product. I want to buy the product. Right? That was the day when I figured out what I want to do with my life. So that was the day, and I figured out what I want to do with my life on that day. The capital is a place where or in which all of the big decisions are made. So the capital is the place, it's kind of a basic thought, and then all of the big decisions are made in the capital. And she is a person whose dignity is well established. So she's a person and her dignity is well established. So we're talking about possession in this one. Person, she is a person whose dignity. There's a relationship of possession between dignity and that person. So using who for person or people, maybe an animal like a beloved cat or something. Using which for thing or things, sometimes a person or a place. That is for thing or things, people or person, but it's less formal than which or who for a person. Who is the most formal for a person? That might also be used for a place depending on the sentence structure. When is used for a time or times, and it's different from interrupting action when. Where or in which is used for places or place. Who or in whose is possession. Please note that where, in which, whose, and when, and in whose are not followed by a verb. So for example, Michigan is a place where I was born. We use where because of this noun here, where I was born. We can't put where in this case here. Michigan is a place that has great natural beauty because we follow the relative pronoun with a verb. He's the man whose son committed the crime. Again, we follow whose with a noun because these are possessive relationships here. But we can't follow whose with a verb. So he's the man who committed the crime. If we have a verb, then we know it's not who, or if we know it's not whose or in which, in whose, or when. Who and whose are also used, who and in whose are used differently as well. So we could say that is the man whose car I saw yesterday. So I saw that man's car yesterday, as opposed to this is the man or that is the man in whose car I saw a bird. And so this is more like a preposition, in whose. So I saw a bird in that man's car. Right? Alternatively, the bag whose owner is Ali is on the floor. So the bag is on the floor in this statement. We know that the owner is Ali. And in the next statement, Ali, in whose possession is the bag, is sitting in the chair. In this case, Ali is sitting in the chair, and we know that he has a bag. Let's do some examples here. What's the name of the man who borrowed your car? We're talking about a person, or whose car you borrowed. Talking about a person and a possession relationship between the man and the car. A cemetery is a place where people are buried, a place, that's our tip-off that is where. A pacifist is a person who believes that all wars are wrong. I suppose we could say that or which, but those aren't our choices here. An orphan is a child whose parents have passed away. Remember, our relationship between parents and children is possessive. The town that, or where, we spent the holidays was very beautiful. The town where we spent the holidays was very beautiful. This school is only for children whose first language is not English. And I don't know the name of the woman to whom I spoke on the phone. Whom is the recipient of an action. It's like a passive recipient would be who if it were active. Jake and Jessica Carter, who got married. Let's look at some other examples here. The man who spoke is my father. The car, which or that, he bought on Thursday was very cheap. Tom, who is my brother, won the match. The waiter, who we gave the tip to, or who we gave the tip, was very pleased. That's the man whose house was destroyed by the tornado. The man over there, whose face is dirty, save the child. The chair on which I was sitting, the pupils that he was speaking to, or who he was speaking to, or whom he was speaking, to whom he was speaking, or whom he was speaking to, excuse me, who he was speaking to, or that he was speaking to, any of those are fine. Whom are you speaking to, or who are you speaking to? Let's look at some other examples. These aren't always the most relevant, so let's have a nice mix of examples here. The famous architect. Let's combine these two sentences. He is a famous architect. His designs won an international award last year. He's a famous architect whose designs won an international award last year. He's the one, the award should be given to him. He is the one who the award should be given to. This is Mary. She is taking over my job when I leave. This is Mary, who is taking over my job. That's the invoice. You sent it to us last week. It's the invoice that you sent. He's a consultant. I rely on his advice. He's a consultant whose advice I rely on. The photocopier has a 2-year guarantee. It cost $2,000. The photocopier, which has a 2-year guarantee. We have the double comma, so we need to use which. The people were stopped at the border. They were all from Eastern Europe. The people who were stopped at the border were all from Eastern Europe. Can you name the man who was America's first president? Can you name the country? Country's a place. Where? We're followed by a verb, so we can't use where. Can you name the country which was the birthplace of Mozart? Can you name the British singer who sang Imagine? Can you name the basketball team which Michael Jordan won NBA titles with? Can you name the country where Mount Everest can be found? Can you name the artist whose famous painting is called The Girl with the Pearl Earring? Can you name the scientist who discovered radiation? Can you name the city where Barack Obama was born? Can you name the actress whose real name was Norma Jean? Can you name the country which is well known? Again, so if we follow the blank with verb, then we can't use where. We've got a couple of tricky ones here with country followed by verb. Lastly, people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Walden Pond, which was written in the 1880s, 1800s. We've got the double comma, so we have to use which. She prefers to watch movies that make her cry, which is also acceptable. He bought all the books blank are required for the course. He bought all the books that are required for the course, which is also correct. In the crowd were several recruits who are regarded as excellent, or you could say which. Say which? No, that. In our grammar, there are a lot of disagreements. I think most people would say that which or that is fine, but who is the most formal? So that's the first response, of course. Which and that are generally, unless there's a double comma situation going on, which and that are generally interchangeable. If you see a comma before a relative pronoun, then which would be the choice, but if there's no comma, then that and which are basically the same. The police are able to find no evidence against her, which surprised no one. Tashanda Virek's children, who all graduated from college. Predictably, the students blank did best. Who did best? Or I suppose we could say that did best. But because they're students, people, that's our first choice. She wanted to buy a scarf that would complement her blue eyes, or which, again, either is correct. The answers, which you can find in the back of the book. Okay. So relative pronouns should be easy enough. Who, which, that, when, where, or in which, who, or in whose. Remember, where and in which mean the same thing. Who and in whose do not mean the same thing. And we don't follow where, in which, whose, in whose, or when with a verb.